Welcome to Screen Talk with yours truly, Nomfanelo. So, I saw this morning on Facebook that there's this unauthorized book coming out on the Fast and Furious franchise. It's called "Welcome to the Family: The Explosive Story Behind Fast and Furious." The blockbusters that supercharged the world. So this is written by Barry Hertz. At first, the name didn't sound familiar to me, but then I realized, oh, this is the same Barry Hertz who works for the Globe and Mail. He is a chief film critic for Globe and Mail, which is based in Toronto. So yeah, I was a bit surprised by this when I first saw this. So, an excerpt was shared from the book to IndieWire, which details why Justin Lin, who has directed a bunch of movies, I would say, for the Fast and Furious franchise. Because if you remember, he was originally supposed to direct the 10th movie, Fast X, but left while the movie was in production. And the excerpt from the book here details what happened essentially. So I'm not going to read every single thing here that's written here. I'll leave a link here in the description if you want to read it in full. Apparently, the book itself is supposed to be out in stores on November 25th. So I'm sure by the time you see this video, the book will be already released. So let's take a look here. So it mentions here that the plan was to have Jason Momoa's character Dante to be the big villain, essentially, and just like how it was played out in the film, it was always going to be where he's connected to the guy that was the villain in the fifth movie, dealing with that dealt with the big heist in Rio. So that was always going to be there. So there's a quote here. Justin has this general outlook on life, which is that the incidental person in the room is the one who you really have to worry about. You don't know them yet, but they might one day become your biggest nemesis or your biggest ally. In this case, it was coming back to the big death in Fast Five and how that comes back to bite you. And yes, that bad guy is gone, but oh wait, he has a kid, and now Dom has a kid too. I mean, we've seen this trope before in various films and shows. I'll be honest though, like I was not a fan of this when I first saw the movie. I just find that stuff to be kind of annoying. Like it would have been better off to just have a new villain, or they could have just had Charlize Theron's character Cipher be the main villain. At least that's what it seemed like it was going for. By the end of the eighth movie, was the eighth or the ninth movie? I can't remember at this point. But that's what it seemed like it was heading. But nope, they had to change it where she's now part of the good guys. Terrible. So Justin Lin, he enlisted Dan Mazzo, who was coming off of the Millie Bobby Brown movie Damsel. I mean, that was a fun movie, but I wouldn't say it's high up there because that, I believe, is a Netflix movie. So apparently, as the story evolved, they brought back John Cena's character Jacob, and then they included Alan Ritchson's character Ames, who was a villain out of nowhere with that character, and then of course with Brie Larson's character Tess. Yeah. And then they mentioned, yeah, he that Justin Lin turned to his brain trust at Perfect Storm to dream up the extravagant set pieces and their exotic international locales. So apparently, while a few elements of the script stay consistent throughout development, including the notion of a cliffhanger ending, everything else was in a constant disorienting state of flux. even more so than usual. At one point, the script prominently featured Hobbs, with the story climaxing in the destruction of Rio. There was also a gigantic battle royale in which Hobbs and Shaw faced off against Dom and Jacob. I find just that doesn't make sense to do because I mean, with Shaw, that's Jason Statham's character. Was flipped to be the good guy after what was it, the seventh movie. So it just doesn't make sense for them to have like a face off unless I don't know, they just want to have this sequence for the sake of because with these actors are notable action stars in their own rights, it just did not make sense, in my opinion, to have that. Apparently, there was discussions about bringing back the Tokyo Drift Boys. Vietnam was once in play as a location, and most outrageously, at one point, Dante assembles what the early script referred to as our Legion of Doom, in which Cole Hauser's Carter Verone from Too Fast, Too Furious, Laz Alonso's Phoenix from Fast and Furious or F4, Joe Taslim's Jaw from Fast and Furious 6, Ronda Rousey's Kara from Furious 7, and other Toretto enemies return to seek collective revenge. Honestly, when I saw this, I'm like, yeah, this sounds silly. It's like, in a way, they're trying to do like Avengers, but in the Fast and Furious world. And I'm just reading this. I'm just kind of like, really, do we need this? But it just seems like as these movies goes on, it gets more ridiculous and loses the point of the franchise overall. But whatever. Universal had the set date for spring 2023, but apparently, like Ensemble kept growing until it ballooned into nearly unsustainable levels. The story had to incorporate not only the regular Toretto crew, but franchise latecomers as Jacob, Cypher, Deckard, and Queenie Shaw, Little Nobody, Statsik, and more. And then there were new players like with Momoa as Dante, Daniela Melchior as Elena's sister, I believe. And of course, there are Brie Larson and Alan Richardson. And it says there are now more marquee level names than ever before, each coming with their own deals, demands, and multiplex size egos. Before a single frame of footage was shot, far more than 100 million had been spent on signing all the above the line talent. I mean, that's a lot of money, and you wonder why some of these movies, not just with Fast and Furious, not just Fast and Furious movies, but just a lot of these blockbuster movies, why they have these high budgets. So that's partly why. So there's a quote. It says, "They say yes to all these actors, and they all come with their own assistants and their own flights and their own trailers, and it's this insane amount of money," recalls production designer Jan Rolfs, returning to F9 after working with Justin Lin on F6. But the biggest stars are often the easiest to work with. Charlize Theron, she's amazing. She's like Pacino, De Niro, Meryl Streep. They just show up and work. They come on time. They're ready. They know their lines. Other people, they get there and they don't know what they want. Okay, let's discuss it for the next 5 hours in your trailer. And then behind the scenes, he was assembling his behind the scenes crew. And then there's a quote. Justin said to me that he wanted all of the threads of the pictures he directed to tie together and build to a climax. He was so familiar with the character arcs that it made sense that he was the person doing this to culminate it all, says Chang. He's always thinking ahead. And then they talked about principal photography. So apparently, Jocelyn tackled two fight scenes involving Charlize Theron, one of which her character faces off against Momoa's character Dante and an army of henchmen, and then another which she goes against Letty. And then apparently timing was tight because Charlize Theron had a limited window in her schedule before she had to film another project. Apparently, everything seemed to go smoothly. Then on Friday, April 22nd, Vin Diesel posted the that Instagram video that had him and Justin Lin. So they linked that video there. Essentially, Justin looked like a hostage in that video. I remember that video. Um, so they put the quotes here, and then yeah, people pointed out that yeah, it looked like a darkly comic hostage video where Jocelyn's eyes appeared to be screaming help to the camera, while Vin Diesel, who was oblivious, kept rolling. Yet, according to those on set, Jocelyn spent his first 3 days shooting in high spirits. Quote, we shot on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and it was all Charlize and Jason. I remember that Friday night I saw Justin. He was the happiest I'd ever seen. He was delighted with the way it was going. He loved the chemistry between Charlize and Jason, recalls cinematographer Wyndon. And then whatever happened, it happened over that weekend, and I never saw him after that. And then, of course, on Tuesday, April 26th, Justin Lin shared on social media through a statement that he was leaving the movie, where he said, quote, with the support of Universal, I've made a difficult decision to step back as director of Fast X while remaining with the project as a producer. Over 10 years and 5 films, we have been able to shoot the best actors, the best stunts, and the best damn car chases. On a personal note, as a child of Asian immigrants, I am proud of helping to build the most diverse franchise in movie history. I will forever be grateful to the amazing cast, crew, and studio for their support and for welcoming me into the Fast family. And then, of course, yeah, people were just like confused, shocked, and all that stuff. Like, I was shocked because at the time, because it just came out of nowhere. So there's a quote here. I spoke to him on the phone the day he left the movie. He called me and Vincent Lascombs, his assistant director, and he just kept saying that his health was more important than the movie. Says Wyndon, something obviously had been cooking on the Friday night before he was so happy. So, according to several high level sources in production, Justin Lin had hit his breaking point over the steadily increasing creative tensions with Vin Diesel, as well as difficulties with his sister slash producer Samantha Vincent, who often acted as Diesel's emissary or spokesperson, so to speak. A key source of discord centered around the script and its ending. While a cliffhanger was always part of the Fast X plan, several drafts of the screenplay also hinge on a jaw dropping twist in which Dante is revealed to be the true father of little Brian. So that is, I believe, Elena's kid with Dom. Some members of the film's team felt that the late game turn was perfect, if deeply dark, way for Dom to reckon with the concept he held most dear family. The proud patriarch of the Fast clan would have to put his life on the line for a kid who wasn't biologically his, who was in fact the offspring of his most feared nemesis. Others, including Vin Diesel, felt differently. It kind of gets that it challenges Dom's ideology in regards to importance of family, because he always says in every film, you got, it's all about family essentially. But at the same time, it kind of feels very soap opera ish to do that. So I don't know if it'll, completely have challenged Dom. At least I think in the way that it would have been executed. But yeah, I was not a fan by this, but I kind of get where the original plan was essentially in terms of challenging Dom from an emotional perspective. Universal was said to be extremely hands on during the entire process and reportedly also not keen on Justin Lin's vision for the final action set piece, and especially over the top sequence that involved Dante using a giant excavator like machine to wreak havoc, a VFX heavy climax that would drive up the cost of a project whose production budget was already well north of $300 million in climate, making Fast X one of the most expensive movies ever made. I'll be honest, I don't remember that final sequence in Fast X. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but I just remember like it kept going on for way too long in the movie. So there's that. There's a quote: "It was really the ending that needed work. It's difficult to describe, but this machine eats things. The bad guy goes down, gets into this machine, comes out, and starts eating cars. And it's like a Transformers movie. It was totally out of context with the movie, I thought," says Alexander Witt, a veteran second unit director and cinematographer who was now back in the franchise after overseeing Fast Five's train heist. Quote, "I thought it was a little too Marvel, and the problem was it would have been all CG, although we ended up with all CG in the end. From the moment that Dom jumps over the dam, it's all CG." I mean, a little too Marvel is a bit of an understatement. I felt it was a bit over the top, essentially, and it just seems like, as I said, as these films go on, it just becomes more ridiculous, and then we lose the point of the franchise. So yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with this. So I get that, for the finale, you need to have like a big set piece, but with this, where they wanted to have like a Transformers type thing where a machine eats stuff, I'm like, do we need this? Like, no. Then says, after a heated closed door meeting on Saturday, April 23rd, Jocelyn reached his limit, threw up his hands, and quit. His departure was unprecedented. While Hollywood history is littered with movies that have lost their directors midway through shooting, they list the examples here, like with Bryan Singer with Bohemian Rhapsody, Phil Lord and Chris Miller for Han Solo. Those were all cases in which the studio and producers fired the filmmakers. Here was a director who essentially voluntarily left the shoot. For the Fast X crew, many of whom had worked with Lin since Tokyo Drift, it was a devastating blow. I mean, I imagine. Obviously, it was a big shock. I was nervous because I had such a great rapport with Justin, and I was like, well, this has nowhere to go but down, recalls Razatos, whose second unit was just about to start shooting the film's opening chase sequence in Italy. But the crew had to balance their emotional unease with practical concerns. Dozens of key people had already spent months in pre production getting the film's complex machinery in motion, and there were hundreds more of who had upended their lives for the promise of several months' worth of work across several different countries. It was the nerve wracking uncertainty of Furious Seven's post Paul Walker all over again, although this time few thought that Universal was going to shut the film down completely. The studio desperately needed Fast X to roll, yet surely whoever stepped in would need a decent amount of time to readjust and recalibrate, right? Quote, "We heard so many different names of directors who were going to come in, and some of them you're going, oh God, that's a really famous director. And if he comes in, he's going to change everything," recalls stunt coordinator Jack Gill. "Is our entire crew going to be out of work?" Some key department heads thought about walking away out of loyalty to Justin Lin. Yet after the news broke, the director reached out to many of his collaborators and encouraged them to stay. Quote, "I asked Justin, should I go? He was the one who hired me, but I was also responsible for all my team, who had blocked out 6 months of time to be free," says supervising stunt coordinator and Splinter Unit director Olivier Schneider, who joined Fast X after working with Lynn on Fast 6. Justin said, "Definitely stay. It's my decision. I want what's best for the franchise." I guess that's nice because I bet for some people, you know, that wouldn't happen essentially, but interesting. So everyone stayed put except for Vey, the director's trusted head of Previs. Quote, "It was kind of heartbreaking because a lot of effort went into it," says Vey, who likened the situation to an experience that's common in Previs work. "You spend forever designing a sequence that's ultimately cut from the final film. It's hard, but you have to say, fuck that sequence, because what you work on next, you're going to crush that thing instead." It was the same thing with Fast 10. Yeah, it was heartbreaking, but also this is a new chapter. I'm not going to say fuck that to the Fast franchise because that's not how I feel. It's more like, all right, let's see what we can do better. Let's see what's new on the horizon. And then here is the cover of the book. The explosive story behind Fast and Furious, the blockbusters that supercharged the world. Welcome to the family. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, this is interesting stuff here. Reading this, like I figured, yeah, like that makes sense because apparently, like for I think as the excerpt mentioned that there's been creative tension between Justin Lin and Vin Diesel, and I guess also too in the studio in this case. But yeah, it's unfortunate, that happened. But the franchise right now, I would say, is not in a good place. I did made video where I talked about the state of the franchise. This was from a Wall Street Journal article at the time, so check out that video if you haven't done so already. But yeah, I would say right now, like the franchise is in shambles. I would say, and I've seen like Vin Diesel, and I'm sure other people involved with that franchise have said that we need to go back to basics essentially. But I don't know at this point if that's feasible. I mean, sure, they can do it if they want to, but I just don't know if that'll regain um, the people that used to love the franchise back. I mean, it all depends on execution, I suppose. But I just feel like, yeah, just conclude the franchise with the one movie, be done with it, and if they want to revisit the franchise, wait for years later, assuming if the last movie does well financially. That's my thoughts on all of this stuff. I would love to know, what do you guys think about all this? Let me know in the comment section. Also, too, do you plan on reading the book? Let me know if you plan to. So if you want to support me, you can visit buymeacoffee.com/numpymaloy, where you could donate and look at exclusive posts there. Also, too, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll be able to comment under the community tab of my channel. As long as the comments are under community guidelines, you should be fine. And if you want to follow me on social media, my links are in the description. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.